are created and should be treated equal. So, yes. We are thankful to all of our sponsors that include the California Senator, Maria Elena Durez, UCLA Labor Center, Kent Wong as the director, the Play Equity Fund along with LA 84. With Renita Sameda serving as president and CEO. And we are eternally grateful to the Holman United Methodist Church staff, volunteers, and friends and members. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you to the official planning event committee, which is so competently led by Karen Hayes. Let's give her a round of applause. So all of you are welcome. You are welcome to reflect. You are welcome to relax. You are welcome as human beings. You are welcome. We welcome you to celebrate the gift of life, to celebrate the gift of freedom fighters, to celebrate our Reverend James Lawson. I'll take a personal point of privilege. It's always nice to see a bishop of the United Methodist Church, Mary Ann Swinson. Let's give her a round of applause. Many of you know that one of the major components, major contributing factors of the civil rights movement and many other movements, but really, as Reverend James Lawson was leading across the country and the world, one of those major contributing factors was the factor of music. The power of music to speak to our minds, to speak to our hearts, to speak to our souls, and renew us in ways in which sometimes even words cannot, without a rhythm and without music, without song. So at this time, we will shift our attention to our Holman United Methodist Church choir, led by Bill Campbell, and they will perform a song, one of Reverend James Lawson's favorite songs we will hear today.
Sing Good morning. Good morning. I'm William Campbell, Jr., Director of the Holman Choir. What a privilege and honor for us to bring musical offerings on this occasion. Sometimes I am tossed and driven, Lord. Sometimes I don't know where to roam. I heard of a city called heaven. This is our selection, City Called Heaven by Francis Hall Johnson.
Good morning. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us for this fantastic celebration of Reverend Lawson. My name is Karen Hayes, and I'm a filmmaker, and I am producing and directing the authorized documentary on the life and work of Reverend James Lawson. I first started going to Reverend Lawson's nonviolence workshops in the 1990s, and have filmed him, filmed the workshops, and filmed him off and on over these many years. And I am just so honored that he has entrusted me with this blessed task. Our vision for the film is to raise awareness about Reverend Lawson's extraordinary story to a wider audience, and also to highlight the tools and strategies for nonviolent direct action that he has devised and practiced and taught so many of us over the years. We really want this film to be a resource for continued movement building for equity and justice. I'd now like to introduce Pamela Tom, who's producing the film with me, and she has a few words to share.
Thanks. Hi, good morning, everybody. I first met Karen decades ago when we were attending UCLA Film School together, and we were united last year by luck, fate, and a mutual friend, so I'm really grateful to be here and part of this project. When Karen asked me to join her in producing this film, I actually had to think about it for a moment, not because of the incredible subject matter, but because producing an independent documentary takes tremendous perseverance, resolve, and perseverance. And I felt that Karen possessed all those qualities. And as a fellow filmmaker and woman of color, I wanted to join her in this journey of telling this very important and urgent story. And I believe that Karen is the perfect person to tell this story. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little overview of where we are with the project. We have spent a whole year, the last year, in production. We've been filming all over the South and here in Los Angeles. And many of the people who are in the film are in the audience today, and we welcome them back. We are in post-production now. We're about a third of the way through post-production, and what you're going to see in a minute or two is about 12 minutes of excerpts from the film. So it's some of the archival material and the music have not been licensed, so you'll see some watermarks, so please disregard that. But it gives you a feeling and flavor of the film that we're trying to tell. Okay, back to Karen. Thank you so much.
Okay. I just want to say thank you again, my pastor, my spiritual advisor, my teacher, Reverend Lawson, for entrusting me with this. And as per usual, I will be expecting a call from you tomorrow to give me your notes on what we're seeing. So don't let me down.
if Reverend Lawson might meet with us and to teach us, and that we could learn from him. And so my friends like Maria Elena Durazo and Antonio Villaraigosa and Karen Bass and Gil DeHaas and Anthony Thigpen and Michelle Pritchard and many others would meet on a regular basis with Reverend Lawson. We called ourselves the Holman Group, named after Reverend Lawson's church. And the impact that he has had on our lives, individually and collectively, has been extraordinary. It has been one of the greatest gifts of my life to have had the opportunity to work with and to learn from Reverend Lawson. For more than 20 years, Reverend Lawson has taught a class on nonviolence at UCLA. And for years and years, we have watched thousands of students gain knowledge, inspiration, and hope for the gifts that Reverend Lawson has taught them and has taught us. In 2019, Reverend Lawson received the UCLA Medal, its highest honor. And in 2021, with the support of Senator Maria Elena Durazo, we were able to dedicate a permanent home for the UCLA Labor Center named the UCLA James Lawson Jr. Worker Justice Center. For generations to come, it will be a center that advocates and promotes the teachings of Reverend Lawson, the teachings of nonviolence, and the power of collective action in building social change. And on the occasion of Reverend Lawson's 95th birthday, we are very proud to announce a new James Lawson Jr. Dolores Huerta Nonviolence Project. That is building on a Senate resolution introduced by Maria Elena Durazo, passed unanimously in the California State Senate to advance nonviolence education in public schools throughout the state of California. So before you leave today, please pick up a postcard on the James Lawson Jr. Dolores Huerta Nonviolence Project. Please pick up a timeline which celebrates the life and legacy of Reverend James Lawson Jr. on this occasion of his 95th birthday. And now I want to call to the stage three very good friends of mine who will join me in a conversation about the transformational impact of Reverend Lawson and the teachings of nonviolence and on our collective and individual lives. Please help me in welcoming Senator Maria Elena Durazo, Maria Elena Durazo was the first woman and first woman of color to lead the hotel workers of Los Angeles, who are now on strike. And she called her good friend, Reverend Lawson, to help her transform the union. She went on to become the first woman and first woman of color to lead the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. and is an extraordinary champion for worker rights and social and economic justice in Sacramento today. Maria Elena Durazo. Please help welcome my very good friend, Yvonne Wheeler. Yvonne Wheeler has dedicated her life to working class struggles in this country with the AFL-CIO, with the Communication Workers of America, with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. She is the first Black woman to lead the 800,000 members strong Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. And please help me welcome my good friend, Kareli Amaya. She is a student of Reverend Lawson. She took our nonviolence class as an undergraduate at UCLA. She is currently a second year's master's student in public policy. She is a statewide leader in the fight for rights for undocumented immigrant youth. Kareli Amaya represents the hopes and futures of a new generation who are undocumented and unafraid. So in this brief conversation this morning, I wanted to lift up the personal stories of three extraordinary women whose lives have been transformed through their work with Reverend Lawson and through their embrace of the philosophy of nonviolence. And I wanted to start with my good friend, Yvonne Wheeler, who was born in the South and who understands the nature of plantation capitalism up close and personal, as Reverend Lawson has taught us all. And so, Yvonne, could you please share your reflections about growing up in the South and the inspirational role that Reverend Lawson had in transforming a major social movement that lasted 20 years in challenging Jim Crow and segregation and still continues to this day. Yvonne.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning. So first, let me just acknowledge and thank Reverend Lawson for all his teachings and of me. He was most patient with me, but also happy birthday. I will share this with you, and I share it with every audience I go to. I'm a daughter of Louisiana. I was raised by two proud parents. One was a proud union letter carrier and union activist, and my mother was a cafeteria worker in Louisiana. So I don't want to age myself, but when I say I was born in the South, I was born during the Civil Rights Movement, and it was during the awakening of the Civil Rights Movement in Louisiana to the ills of racism and bigotry. And so my parents, who taught us not only to have values and dignity on our jobs and everything that we did, it wasn't easy growing up in the South. During the time that I grew up, segregation was real. I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And although civil rights laws were passed and the Board of versus Brown of Education, the Supreme Court ruling on the Brown versus Board of Education had passed, desegregation was still alive and well in Louisiana. And so of all my 5 siblings, I was the only one that was required to go to a segregated elementary school, middle school, and high school. And although we walked to the middle school, elementary school, and middle school, we had to take buses to the high school. And they wouldn't provide private transportation for us. They required us to take public transportation. And inherently, we knew something was wrong with that. So a group of us, all black kids, got together and decided to march on the school board. Now, as I shared with you, my father was a letter carrier and he was an activist, so I got a lot of my activism from my father. But my mother was a cafeteria worker. And if you know about classified workers today, my mother didn't have a collective bargaining agreement. My father did, and that provided certain protections for him. So anyway, we marched on the school board, of which my mother worked for. And so by the time we arrived there, she was standing out there in her white uniform, and I said, she's gonna kill me. And when I told her while we were marching, she joined us in the school board, and we were able to force. She joined us, and we were able to force the school district, East Baton Rouge Parish School District, to provide us with public transportation. Now, that's what we referred to then as direct action, and didn't know where we got it from. We watched Dr. King. We knew about I Am a Man because during that time, all we would see on Jet magazines, because they didn't show it on the televisions, we would have Ebony and Jet magazines, and we would see it and read it. So we knew about, and my father was an activist, so I would march with him all the time. He was always in a civil rights march. And so those are the things and the principles that we got was from, later on I discovered, from Reverend Lawson. As I moved here to California, got the opportunity to meet Reverend Lawson. All those principles that we applied back in Louisiana, I realized it was from his teaching, and we thank you so much for that today. Yeah.
When Maria Elena Durazo was first elected president of Unite Here Local 11, it sent shockwaves not only through the Los Angeles labor movement, but throughout the labor movement nationally. And Maria Elena called upon her good friend, Reverend James Lawson Jr., to help her rebuild and to energize and to promote a vision for the future for her union. So Maria Elena, tell me about that process of working with Reverend Lawson to transform your union, Local 11, and the impact that had on the broader labor movement.
Great. Thank you. Happy birthday. Feliz cumpleaños. When we started the movement to change our union, we knew it had to be a cultural change. This wasn't just a matter of changing leaders, and so we could do better, and members could do better. There was significant racism within the union itself. The leadership was anti-Latino, even though 75% of the members were Latino, refused to allow contracts to be translated into Spanish, refused to allow meetings to be translated and become bilingual. So we knew we had to, and all those years, of course, they wouldn't allow the participation of the members. So what did the employers do? They took full advantage of that. They negotiated extraordinarily bad contracts, but nonetheless, there was a contract. And so we decided we had to make a fundamental, across-the-board cultural change within the union, within the labor movement, and with employers and with business. That workers who clean these rooms, the women who made the beds, the cooks, the dishwashers, they all had a right to a better life. And the money was there, the respect was not there, so we had to do something fundamental. Of course, myself and my late husband, Miguel, had, and he especially was directly involved with the farm workers movement. He was recruited by Dolores Huerta. So we had a sense of the kind of union that we wanted, a union that fought for social justice. And my first experience with Reverend Lawson was when at LAX airport, there were 500 workers who were fired en masse in order to make way for a company that was going to do food service at minimum wage. Reverend Lawson, I met him, came to him, and he organized a group of ministers and explained what the issue was going to be, how we had to stand with these workers. They were all African American, and they made that decision to stand with the workers who were predominantly Latino. They did that because of the humanity that was at stake here, because of what was being done to other human beings was wrong, and it impacted the entire community. That was my first experience. From then on, it was just a matter of, I felt like this extraordinary privilege that I could be in the same room with Reverend Lawson, in the same room where he would be teaching us. And all I could picture was how he had taught Congressman Lewis, how he had taught others, how they had built a movement based on nonviolence the way Cesar Chavez had done. We could do something like that in Los Angeles. There was no reason why we couldn't do it. And it was because of his, reminding us of the courage that it takes to be nonviolent. But we had the tools. Going on strike is a nonviolent direct action. Getting arrested is a nonviolent direct action. Fasting is a nonviolent direct action. Picketing is a nonviolent direct action. Reverend Lawson, I'll just give one example. We were in a years-long fight, unfortunate fight with USC. And one year, at graduation, Reverend Lawson led us, and we took over the intersection right next to USC. And Reverend Lawson stood at a podium, and he handed each of us, while we were wearing our cap and gown, he handed to us a diploma as warriors and fighters for justice. So I could go on and on. I just want to give one more quick example of how it was that our ethnicity, our race, our language, where we were born, how we were raised, and where that happened. Really, what Reverend Lawson taught us cuts across all of that. And so when he did the teachings, he directly engaged and did these workshops with these hotel workers and food service workers who didn't speak English very well. But his passion and his explanation for how to do actions came across perfect. They learned in action after action after action the principles of nonviolence, the power of nonviolence, the love that comes with nonviolence, and how that creates the culture change that we eventually created, not only in our union, but across the labor movement. Thank you.
Carelli, Maria Elena talked about how for generations, Reverend Lawson has been inspiring, educating, teaching young people about the power of nonviolence. So if you could please share your own personal journey, how you took Reverend Lawson's class at UCLA, and what impact that had on your emergence as an immigrant youth leader.
Thank you, Kent. Hello, good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Reverend James Lawson, happy birthday. It's so beautiful, I think, to see everyone celebrate just Reverend Lawson's life and journey, and I am so blessed to be here myself. I am an undocumented student without DACA. My family immigrated to the United States when I was 2 years old, but I never was able to qualify for DACA because just arbitrary reasons, and having to navigate a system where I get told you don't have a social security number, you can't work, you can't apply to these scholarships, etc. I think I had so many doors closed in my face growing up. I grew up in San Diego County, North County. It was one of the most racist cities, and I came to find out that when I was an undergrad at UCLA that my city actually had a partnership with ICE that they would put DUI checkpoints, but in reality, it was just to deport people. So my mom worked in the swap meet, and there was a lot of times that she had to stop working at the swap meet because there were raids all the time. And I remember times I didn't go to school because the shortcut my grandpa would take through the Food for Less would sometimes get raided because it was, the city I grew up was 95% Latinos. And when I came to UCLA and in my freshman year, I enrolled in the Nonviolence class taught by Reverend James Lawson and Kent Wong, and it just blew my mind of the organizing. Of the organizing and power that existed not only in the undocumented immigrant youth movement, but in the civil rights movement and the AAPI movements, and how people have come together to organize, to dismantle the status quo of these things are okay, to oppress others. And I took that class in 2018, and I have been a speaker for that class now until I think I was a speaker this past year in 2023. So it's just time and time again seeing all these undergrads, just little brains, just turn on these lights. I'm like, wow, this is so amazing. We should take notes on this, and I think to see the movements at UCLA recently with the graduate student strike, with the Opportunity for All campaign, all of them have been advised by Reverend James Lawson. I think we're all very attentive students to learn how to love on others, and kill violence with kindness. So.
Wonderful.
Yvonne, these are amazing times for the U.S. labor movement. The hotel workers are on strike. The screen actors are on strike. The writers are on strike. The United Auto Workers are on strike against the major 3 auto corporations in America. Kaiser may be going out on strike. And in many ways, the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor is front and center. But I want you to share more about how Reverend Lawson has influenced you, your leadership, and your work as the first Black woman to lead the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor.
Throughout my career, I've always been under the, studied Reverend Lawson, and I've always called him and asked for advice. And so I was working for ASME International, and I just wanted to let you know it was a question that Kent asked about your work with, my work with ASME and how it affected your leadership with the sanitation workers. Everybody knows about the Memphis sanitation workers. And so I was so impressed with that campaign. And working with ASME, by the way, I spoke to Bill Lucy yesterday about, I was coming here and he told me to tell you happy birthday. And and he shared with us how your leadership was a turning point to not only that campaign and how you were instrumental in bringing Dr. King out, and how you were instrumental in bringing credibility to those workers that were low-wage workers who were underpaid, and because of the Echo Roberts and those 2 sanitation workers that were killed. And so connecting those dots always has been the guiding light for the work that I do here. And so as anyone knows, it's been a hot labor summer here in Los Angeles. It's been a hot labor summer. And so you take the teachings of Dr. King, and everybody say, Vaughn, you're operating so cool. I mean, you don't seem like you're stressed. And I'll say, but you don't know. But one of the things that I learned, and I will share this from Reverend Lawson, he said, no matter, and I use it in all my speeches too, I say, no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter who you love, there's a place for you in this labor movement. And I firmly believe that. And thank you for teaching us to love people in spite of who they are or who we want our expectations of them should be. And so we have whether you have Hollywood, the entertainment industry on one end, we have 70,000 entertainment unions in SAG-AFTRA that are out on strike. We have 11,000 with the Writers Guild that are on strike, and God, I hope they come to finalize their agreement. It looks like they are. And then we have where I call myself the co-vice president, number 4, of Unite Here, that have 50,000 members out on strike. Where are you, Unite Here? Stand up and be recognized. So whether you are in Hollywood or in a hotel, the issues are the same. The issues are the same. There's one common issue, and it's corporate greed. It's corporate greed, and we have to understand that. And so when we understand what we're dealing with, and we had to come and we had to unite around each other's issues. And so we brought everybody together in the same room and said, how are we going to work together rather than working in our own individual silos? And if you go to any picket line, you will see a Unite Here member out there protesting with a writer, with a actress. I mean, everybody's supporting everybody's issue because we understand that there's commonality and there's similarities in each individual strike. We realize that the corporations, major corporations got bailouts, billions of dollars of bailouts. We know that these owners, these corporate managers are getting payouts of like millions of dollars, but yet and still the individual workers who are making those corporations profitable are not they don't want to share that wealth with those workers. And the workers are saying enough is enough. We want our fair share. And that's what we're seeing now. They're standing up and they're fighting back, and they said that unless you share the wealth that we help you gain, unless you share those profits, we are not going back to work. And we thank you for that.
Maria Elena's track record in the California State Senate has been extraordinary. She is one of the leading champions for immigrant rights, for workers' rights, for women's rights, for civil and human rights today. But there are 3 initiatives that she has successfully moved forward that have been directly linked to Reverend Lawson's guidance. Many more, but I'll highlight 3. One is naming a permanent home for the Labor Center in Reverend Lawson's honor. Number 2 is expanding labor centers and labor studies throughout the University of California, the largest expansion in the history of the country.
Wow.
And number 3, one that we are celebrating today, and that is a Senate resolution that Maria Elena anchored to expand nonviolence education in the public schools of California, the first initiative of its kind in U.S. history. So, please tell me, Maria Elena, about your hopes and dreams for this nonviolence project.
Thank you. Thank you. And I apologize. I meant at the beginning of my remarks to thank Reverend Walden and Holman. This is a place that because of Reverend Lawson, I've always considered home. I've always considered a place that I could come and talk about anything and find solutions. So thank you, and to the congregation. So we all know the kind of hate and violence that has been generated across this country by those who want to stop us. And they use violence and hate over and over and over again, from the violence on officers at the Capitol to the violence in a temple, in a church, violence through hate and words, violence through physical attacks, whether you're LGBTQ or African American or an immigrant, shootings It's just been growing and growing and growing. But yet we know we have a movement for peace, for peaceful means of winning justice. We know that. We need to teach that. We need to spread that the way that Reverend Lawson has done in the universities and through the labor movement. We need to do that in such a way that we give more credibility to nonviolence movement than we do to the violent movement. We talk a lot about that probably in the schools. We get swept up in it, but there's no formal way in our educational system in which we teach about the nonviolent movements throughout the world and throughout history. Throughout history. We never hear about that. We never talk about that. So there's no alternative for us as we're growing up, unless you happen to take an ethnic studies course. That might be it, but you're lucky if you can get to do that. So for me, no better way to continue the teachings of nonviolence, the teachings of nonviolence for social justice. It's not just peace that we're looking for, it's justice that we're looking for. That's what this movement is all about. So two young women, Esperanza Ross and Jasmine Marroquin. Where's Jasmine? Jasmine's here somewhere. No? Back here. There you are. Jasmine, they came up with this idea. Why don't we introduce the notion of making it a formal part of our curriculum in the schools, in the public schools, so that our kids see that as an alternative to what they are facing, to what they go through every single day. And we're lucky to have had that. With Reverend Lawson came up with this resolution, and pretty soon, like everything else, people start jumping in. I want to help. How do I do this? What else can I do? Ken jumped in. We passed the resolution. We had those people of another party that fundamentally, what does Reverend Lawson teach us? They can be won over. And they were. So they voted for this. They voted for it. So to me, the kinds of things that I've been through, that Dolores has been through and taught us, everything that we've done, we can put that in a formal way. I would like the story of the Immigrant Workers' Freedom Ride that Reverend Lawson and Congressman Lewis co-chaired. I want that to be taught to our kids. I want that along with the stories that we can tell about that, how we had to rush out of a meeting with African-American ministers to go to the hospital to see our grandkids born. Lots of stories, lots of power in those stories, a lot of love in those stories. That's what we want to be taught to our kids.
Thank you, Maria Elena. The power of nonviolence in our classrooms has been profound. And Gareli said that she was a student of ours as a first-year student at UCLA. She has come back to speak at our class. And this past spring, her lecture was applying Reverend Lawson's 4 steps to a nonviolent campaign to the success of a historic campaign to secure employment rights for undocumented students within the University of California. So, Gareli, tell me how you helped to lead this fight for opportunity for all, grounded on Reverend Lawson's teachings and on the teachings of nonviolence.
Woo. We got a vote passed in May that the regions of California will adopt and implement Opportunity for All. But for those of y'all who do not know, the Opportunity for All campaign actually launched last October. We're going to be a year since we launched that campaign this year. And it was a group of labor studies folks, undocumented students, and the Center for Immigration Law and Policy at the UCLA Law School, lawyers come together and find creative solutions of what are we going to do to support undocumented students, especially at the UC, right? We're seeing DACA is hanging on a thread. Immigrant folks are being attacked in Florida and Texas and Arizona and all these places. And what can we do to provide some support to students, right? And I think me being directly affected, now a graduate student at UCLA, not being able to work and not having access to things like tuition remission or GSRs or TA-ships, right? It puts me at a disadvantage from my other colleagues, from my other students. And after analyzing a law, the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, the attorneys found that the UC is in its rights to hire undocumented students, undocumented people to work, to be under this umbrella. But of course, like everything, if we come with this legal analysis to the bureaucrats of the UC, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, let me pass this for you, all right? It's going to take a fight. And we learned from the teachings of Reverend James Lawson, right? Hey, what is your audience, right? What is going to be your ask? And we negotiated as a campaign, right? Where we gave public comment, every regents meeting, we shared our stories very powerfully of how we were affected. We built coalitions. And then actually, Reverend James Lawson joined us for our direct action in May 17th, was actually the anniversary of Brown v. Board of Education. And because the next day on May 18th, the regents were gonna vote of what was gonna be the future of our campaign. And you guys were able to see a little glimpse of Reverend James Lawson's powerful, powerful address to undocumented students, to the UCs, that under the sun, under the Lord's, you know, the term undocumented should not exist. We are all one, and we, no matter of like race, no matter of citizenship, no matter of gender, we all come together, right? And it was so powerful to see undocumented students inspired and to fight. And I think a week after I came to the class and spoke, and we were talking about these strategies that we had learned through the Nonviolence and Social Movements class, and there was one step left that we needed to accomplish. Once the resolution was passed, right? We are not gonna stop until the first undocumented student receives their first paycheck after being hired by the UC. And that next step is to follow up, to continuing asking, to continue pushing, to continue to bring the media and be like, hey, you made this promise. My life is in the line. My family's future of being hired, of being able to enjoy and put to practice what I've learned under this institution is in the line, and you have the power to implement that. And I feel like our campaign was so successful because we followed those 4 steps. And we engaged in nonviolence, and we picketed, and we marched, and we rallied, and we gave public comment. And I feel like that's why we're here today.
Wow, you are so powerful. You're so powerful. Wow.
On behalf of Senator Maria Elena Durazo, on behalf of Yvonne Wheeler, on behalf of Gareli Amaya, all of us would like to wish you, Reverend James Lawson Jr., a very happy 95th birthday. We want to thank you for allowing us to be part of your life and to together to help to grow the beloved community. Thank you, Jim.
Good morning. Is Ms. Peggy Trotter Damond Priestley come to the podium, please? Miss Peggy Trotter Damond Priestley is a former freedom rider and working member of the historic Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, better known as SNCC. Ms. Priestley was jailed in Maryland for a sit-in protest and in Georgia while registering Black voters in underserved rural areas. Ms. Priestley is a contributing author of Hands on the Freedom Plow, personal accounts of the women in SNCC. Ms. Priestley is a longtime member of Holman and writes and performs poetry and spoken word for events and programs at the church and in the community. Ms. Priestley is the descendant of historic, multifaceted family tree, among which are her ancestors Sally Hemings' sister, Mary Hemings Bell of the Thomas Jefferson's Monticello plantation. Her great-great-grandparents, Ellen and William Craft, were escaped slaves and international abolitionists. And also, she is the great-niece of the esteemed early civil rights activist and Boston newspaper publisher, William Monroe Trotter of the Boston Guardian. Ms. Priestley received the SCLC Southern California Rosa Parks Humanitarian Award. She is available for speaking engagements, presentations, and performances. We will now listen to the inspired work of Ms. Priestley.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. To our Reverend Jim Lawson, a luminosity of spirit. Today, we celebrate his extraordinary life of ultimate service, of beloved struggle, of one who followed his conscience above all else. He is one who listened and understood, followed a faith that propelled him from a very young age to just find another way to deal with all the hate and fear. He always presents us with the truth, a space we can enter where we must choose which path to follow. He has something inside so strong, something inside so strong. Nobody knows the trouble he's seen. Nobody knows all his sorrows. So he tells us the road will not be easy, that there would be mountains to climb and trials to endure, but that we've come too far to turn back now. His own resilience inspires us. He does not tire, but reminds us of the lines we must draw, of the lines we must not cross, of the jails we must fill, of the trials we must endure, of the stands we must take, that there is redemption in common suffering when it calls out right from wrongs. His unique legacy goes beyond the gospel, probes deeper, requires more of us, brings us to our knees, brings us to our feet, to show up, to shout out, to march and protest, to seek reconciliation, to always take a moral stand in this struggle that never ends, where spirit and humanity must embrace to forge a world with the hope of the peace that we seek. Boldly claim the freedom that is ours and the justice we so deserve. So now, let us shout together, amen and hallelujah. Amen and hallelujah.
Turn me round, ain't gonna let nobody, Lordy. Turn me round, keep on walking, yeah, keep on talking, Lordy. Marching up to freedom, yeah. Ain't gonna let segregation, Lordy. Turn me round, turn me round, turn me round, ain't gonna let segregation, Lordy. Turn me round, keep on walking, yeah, keep on talking, yeah, marching up to freedom, yeah. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse, Lordy. Turn me round, turn me round, turn me round, ain't gonna let no jailhouse. Turn me round, keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom.
I now have the opportunity and the privilege of introducing our next leader. She has worked her entire life to all of our social justice issues, civil rights, equal rights, dignity for women, LGBTQ. Every issue, she is always there. She was born in New Mexico. Her father was a farm worker and a miner by trade and a union activist who ran for political office and won in the state legislature in 1938. Her mother rented rooms to low-wage workers. So Dolores has spent most of her childhood and entire adult life, had spent, in Stockton, California. She was a student, and after graduating, she got her provisional teaching credential, and she taught until she realized she couldn't stand to see her students come to school with empty stomachs and bare feet. And so thus began her organizing career. She was an organizer with the Community Service Organization and founded the Agricultural Workers Association. She set up voter registration drives. She pushed local governments to make improvements in the community. And then she met Cesar Chavez. Can you imagine the two of them? Cesar and Dolores lobbied to have the CSO, the organization they both belonged to expand their work to include farm workers. But the organization was focused on urban issues. That's when they said, together, they co-founded the National Farm Workers Association. She was the skilled organizer of the coup, too. She was a tough negotiator. She was the woman who faced a lot of obstacles, a lot of pushback. But having said that, she kept it going. Her and Cesar joined with Filipino farm workers. They combined, led, and created the United Farm Workers Union, and they established the first law of its kind in the United States, giving farm workers in 1975 the right to collectively organize and bargain for better wages and working conditions, the first in the nation. For her, the practice of nonviolence is not only a philosophy, but it was a approach, an organizing approach, because there's so many families participating in our movement. And it was a matter of giving giving safety to all families. She is widely known, and I'm glad accurately given credit for the phrase, "Sí se puede." That phrase is used, I think, more than any other 3 words in the whole world. She's been beaten by the police, almost lost her life, but she kept on. Si se puede. She works, she doesn't give up. She's with the poor, she's with women, she's with children. She travels constantly. Earlier this week, she was in Atlanta. Last night, she came in from Texas, and she started her own foundation. I just want to say personally, on top and in addition to all of that, well, let me just say, finally, in 2012, President Barack Obama bestowed Dolores Huerta with the most prestigious award given to a civilian, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So I just want to say, I always call on Dolores, and I have for decades. She's been an extraordinary mentor to me, and she tells the truth. She won't hide, or she won't cover things up. She tells me exactly what I should know and what I should think about. I am so proud and privileged that she's been part of my life, also the teachings of nonviolence. Please welcome our esteemed Dolores Huerta.
Thank you, Maria Elena Durazo. Please, let's give her a big applause. Maria Elena Durazo, our champion for justice. Thank you so much, Maria. And Reverend Lawson, happy birthday. It's so wonderful to be here in your presence. And so happy to have been in your presence many times during our working careers. So this is a great moment. To recognize someone, and I am so blessed to even be in your presence, Reverend Lawson. So blessed to be in your presence. I'm sure that all of us feel the same way here in this auditorium today. When we started the Farm Workers Union, that was one of the principles that we adopted at the very beginning, the principle of nonviolence. I was really happy when I met Cesar Chavez, that he was a disciple of Gandhi. He read everything that he could put his hands on about Mahatma Gandhi. And so we decided that when we were going to start the United Farm Workers, that it had to be on the principles of nonviolence. Because every single attempt in the past to organize farm workers had ended in violence, with many people getting killed during those struggles. We were trying to avoid that. And Cesar told all of the workers that it had to be nonviolent. And if they did not want to engage in the practice of nonviolence, that he would leave the union. Often we were attacked. Our workers, our organizers were beaten up many times. And they would say to Cesar, why do we have to be so pacifist? Here people are beating us. Why can't we respond? And he said, no. If we resort to violence, then the violence will get worse, and soon we will be attacking each other. This is what he said. And many times, many of us were beaten, as Maria Elena just mentioned this, but we knew that we had to keep that vow. Cesar himself, as many of you may know, fasted 3 times, twice, for 25 days, again, dedicating himself to nonviolence. And his last fast was for 36 days that he fasted. And that, again, he wanted to bring the attention about the violence that was happening to farm workers with the use of pesticides, and how many people were getting killed, and how many children were being born deformed by the use of pesticides. Maybe Cesar's fast may have shortened his life, because he died very young. Both of his parents lived to be 100 years old, and Cesar died in his 60s. But in the meantime, he was able to get that message across. And the resolution here that has been passed here with Senator Maria Elena Durazo, and actually Kent Wong and the rest of you that have worked on this, to teach nonviolence in our school systems so that we can stop this. We know that right now we are in a very difficult moment in our country. We have a fascist movement that is going on. And the use of public violence against the citizens of the country, and to criminalize people because they are women or because they are people of color, that this is wrong, and we've got to stop this. And the only way that we can do this is to start teaching nonviolence to our children in our schools and make it a way of life for everyone. And the issue of nonviolence is not only about violent action, but it also talks about violence in the words and the things that we say and the things that we speak, in the public policy that is passed by our elected officials in our country. So it's much deeper. It's much deeper than just a violent action in terms of a physical action of nonviolence. So we know that our country right now, our democracy is at stake. And so all of us have to do something to be able to save our country and to save our democracy. And of course, one of the issues that we have always had in our country that we are still fighting to solve is the issue of racism. Racism is a violent issue, you might say. Racism is a violent issue. And we know that racism comes from slavery. It comes from slavery. And the way that workers are treated, as we spoke today when all of these workers are on strike, the fact that any human being should have to work their entire life to make somebody else wealthy, and yet they cannot have enough money for their own families, okay? This is violence in itself, as we speak. So we have to fight for the dignity of all workers, but also we have to fight for the dignity of every single human being. And when I say that, I also want to include women and children, okay? When we talk about the dignity of every single person. And so one of the things that I have been preaching, and I kind of call it preaching, I guess it really isn't, but as I go around speaking, I just want to remind people that we are one human race, okay? One human race. And one thing I really wish to ask everyone here to please, in our messages that we are fighting for economic and social justice, just to remind people of that we are one human race. And as one human race, that we have to respect and protect each other. And please take this message home to your families. Our human race came from Africa. As our human race traveled across the planet, and it went up there to those northern areas where it was very, very cold, people lost the color of their skin, unfortunately. Different color hair, different color eyes, but at the end of the day, we are all Africans of different shades and colors, everybody, okay? Please take the hand of the person next to you. Take the hand of the person next to you. Please turn to that person and say, "Hello, relative." Hello, relative. And as we remember that we are all related, and the way that we survived on planet Earth is because we protected each other, we cared for each other, we shared what we had with each other, and this is the way that we will be able to be able to stop the haters in our country from destroying our democracy, okay? So we have to think of creative ways of how we can use nonviolence, again, to stop the fascist movement in our country. Maria Elena, earlier, she mentioned marches, picket lines, fasts, and by the way, she did a 14-day fast that she didn't mention, okay? But she was trying to get the service workers at University of Southern California to have a union. And I know many of us have fasted. Sometimes, maybe one day, I mentioned Cesar's fast that he did for 25 days twice and 36 days. So all of us have to think of creative ways. How can we use nonviolence to stop the hatred and the fascism in our country? I don't exactly know, but all of us have to think about that. How can we stop the corporate greed that is keeping workers, that they have to keep on going on strike to get a better life? I know that we can all do this together, and I just want to throw that out there of honoring Reverend James Lawson, honoring Cesar Chavez, honoring Dr. King, and all of the great heroes that came before us, and doing what we have to do to make sure that we keep our democracy alive. And if we have that nonviolence teaching in our schools, it will be one way that maybe in our educational system that we will not graduate any more neo-Nazis or white supremacists or haters. So all of us working together to honor Reverend Lawson, we all really have to think very hard, think very creatively, as I said, and think what can we do to stop the violence and stop the fascism in the United States of America. Because if we can stop it here, we could stop it anywhere. Yes, we can. Now, I'd like to ask everybody in the audience to please stand up. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I know you know the answers. So the only way that we can fight the corporate greed and the violence in our society is by all of us coming together and working together. So the 2 questions I'm going to ask you, the first one I'm going to ask you is who has the power? I want you to say, we've got the power. Hold on, hold on, hold on. And then the second question I'm going to ask you is what kind of power? We usually say people power, but today we're going to say non-violent power, okay? Can we do that? Okay. So let's all shout very, very loud so that the haters can hear us. All right, let's go. Who's got the power? We got the power. Okay, let's do that again. Some people aren't sure. Okay, one more time, all right? Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? Non-violent power. Are we going to use our nonviolent power to honor Reverend James Lawson and also to save our democracy in our country? What do we say? ¿Se puede o no se puede? Sí se puede. One more time louder. Sí se puede. Okay, let's do it all together with an organized hand clap. Let's go. One more. Let's all do a big old viva for Reverend James Lawson all together. Que viva Reverend James Lawson! Viva! Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores Huerta. I first met Reverend Lawson 40 years ago. I first met Dolores Huerta 50 years ago when I was a boycott organizer for the United Farm Workers of America. So to have the privilege of being involved in the James Lawson Jr. Dolores Huerta Nonviolence Project is a dream come true. Our next speaker is a good friend of mine. Dr. Bob Ross is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the California Endowment. For more than 20 years, he has led the charge to provide healthcare access for all Californians. Under his leadership, they launched the Building Healthy Communities initiative to partner with community-based organizations throughout California to address the healthcare needs of low-income residents. Through the campaign for Health for All, he led the fight to advocate for healthcare access for everyone, including our undocumented communities. And through Maria Elena's leadership, 2 million undocumented immigrants have access to health care because of that leadership. A couple months ago, Bob Ross and I were gathered to watch the extraordinary clip that you saw that Karen Hayes and Pamela Tom screened. And during the reception afterwards, Bob came up to me and he was so deeply moved by the clip of Reverend Lawson, and he asked, what can we do collectively to honor the legacy of Reverend James Lawson Jr. and Dolores Huerta? And through that brief conversation, Bob committed to support the launch of the James Lawson Jr. Dolores Huerta Nonviolence Project. After 24 years, Bob Ross is stepping down as president and CEO next year, but he has left an extraordinary legacy in the world of philanthropy that understands the importance of organizing, of social justice, of nonviolent direct action, and of building the beloved community. Please welcome Bob Ross.
I shall remain permanently irritated with whoever put me after Dolores Huerta on the agenda. I consider myself a Christian, and I may find a way to forgive you, but today is not that day. Pastor Walden, thank you for hosting this amazing, amazing event. My sister friend, Maria Elena Durazo, my brother friend, Mark Ridley Thomas. Breathe this moment in, y'all. Breathe it in. We are in the physical presence here at the iconic Holman United Methodist Church of not just one, but two makers of history in social and racial justice in this nation on this day. I can assure you that my body may appear calm, but my spirit is trembling with history today. Trembling. Watching this panel, we are witnessing and honoring, not just, by the way, happy birthday. We are in the presence of 3 generations of social justice warriors. In Huerta and Lawson, in people named Ridley Thomas and Durazo and Wheeler and Wong. and that young, bright shooting star we just witnessed in Kareli. We will not see many days like this, y'all. Ken, I remember our conversation a little bit differently. I remember you inviting me on behalf of the California Endowment to support Reverend Lawson at his birthday, and I asked you, well, what would Reverend Lawson prefer, a birthday cake or a financial commitment to the Lawson Huerta curriculum? And as a result of that answer, Kent, we are here to announce a $500,000 commitment to the Lawson Huerta nonviolence curriculum. Better than a piece of cake, I would imagine. And then lastly, Karen Hayes, thank you. And I certainly was moved enough by what we saw this morning, so you can rely upon another $50,000 in support to finish this film so future generations can take in the Lawson and Huerta history. Thank you.
But more importantly, big and tall in heart. Once again, happy birthday, Reverend James Lawson. And as the current senior pastor of Holman United Methodist Church, I am often, my memories indebted to you for serving here for well over 20 years, making sure that the lights were on and the doors would remain open. And my thoughts in terms of who could introduce such a man in the person of Reverend James Lawson, a man who not only service to this congregation, but a service to the world, service to his family. That brings me to introduce another man who has also displayed service to his family as a husband, a father, a grandfather, a man who also served in our capital, Sacramento, a man served in our county of Los Angeles, a man served in our city of Los Angeles as well. This man knows Reverend James Lawson for decades, for they have, as you've seen in the video, they've marched together, hand in hand, served communities hand in hand. This man is Mark Ridley Thomas.
Delighted to be here this morning. If you're as proud and as happy and honored to be here to celebrate the life and the commitment of the Reverend J.M. Lawson Jr., why don't you just clap your hands and celebrate? Come on and show him the love that he deserves. Dr. Walden, Karen Hayes, Senator Maria Elena Durazo, the one and only Dolores Huerta, to the one and only Avis Ridley Thomas, just got to keep it real at all times, you understand. To Bob Ross, who keeps on doing what needs to be done in the way that it needs to be done. May I acknowledge the Lawson family for all of what they are. I see you, Phil. It is not mine to violate a basic principle, that is to not allow the introduction to be longer than the presentation itself. So suffice it to say the following. It was in 1974 at this very campus where I met the Reverend J.M. Lawson Jr. I was scarcely 20 years old. And from that day forth, we have known each other, we have loved each other, we have challenged each other, we have respected each other, we have embraced each other from that day forward. It is not to be overlooked that when I was a high school teacher at Immaculate Heart High School, Jim Lawson came to teach in the courses that I had developed on the philosophy of Martin Luther King to those young high school students, and they were as excited as they could be, and they went home to tell their parents about a great man who had visited them in high school. I wish to say that it was right here in the educational facilities of this church that Dolores, developed my student teaching and the credentials that you get right here at it was called the Area E Alternative School in LA Unified School District. Anybody remember any alternative schools at the time? We were doing experimental things. Larry Frank raised his hand. Victor Riego couldn't remember, so he didn't raise his hand, but we do recognize the fact that a lot was going on. And so from that point forward, chairing the board of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Los Angeles, named me as the executive director. That was in 1981. Formative years, all through the time of my graduate education at Immaculate Heart College in Christian Ethics. Jim Lawson was there, guiding, leading, nurturing, supporting. At the point of my advancement to the work of the doctoral degree at the University of Southern California, right there, through fatherhood, right there, all the way through the journey of civil rights actions, all through the time in the South when we were there, many years after the high point of the civil rights movement. Jim Lawson and I were, in one instance, in New Orleans, Louisiana, where we had one of the meetings of the SCLC, and memorable moments. And so in my spirit, deeply embedded, is the presence of the Reverend J.M. Lawson Jr. I shall never forget him, cannot forget him, wouldn't think about forgetting him. And I love him, and there ain't nothing he can do about it. I'm going to take my seat, but before doing so, I just want to provide one anecdote. It's an interesting one. It was on the occasion of a dedication of a plaque at USC in honor of Cesar Chavez. Jim Lawson and I were there. And it happened to be in the shadow of the height of the Free South Africa movement. And as you might not be surprised, that university was deeply invested in apartheid in terms of its resources and its financial portfolio. The president happened to be at this event of the university, and Jim and I were there. We were paying appropriate respects to the dedication. It was a modest event, as I recall. And after it, people were going to shake the hand of the president of the university. I chose not to. Jim Lawson turned to me and said, "Mark, it is simply unacceptable for you not to acknowledge this human being for the stance he's taken at this university. After all, how are you going to let him know that he's a human being worthy of being respected in a manner that causes him to respect the people across the globe?" That was the message of nonviolence delivered to me that day, and I have never forgotten it. And so Renata, I reluctantly shook his hand. But shook his hand I did, and I never forgot that lesson up until this day. So who is Jim Lawson? Teacher. Who is Jim Lawson? Preacher. Who is Jim Lawson? Nurturer. Who is he? Embracer. Who is Jim Lawson? Warrior. Who is Jim Lawson? Advocate of nonviolence. Nonviolence in both the priestly and the prophetic traditions. He personifies that. Not only the philosophy, but the efficacy of nonviolence. That's who the Reverend Dr. J.M. Lawson Jr. is, and that is why we are here today thanking God for allowing us to indeed celebrate his 95th birthday. I give you now the Reverend J.M. Lawson Jr.
I was very, very blessed to be birthed in a family of immigrants. My mother had come from Jamaica at age 25 on her own to live in the United States because she thought she'd have a better chance. My father was the grandson of an escaped slave, Henry Dangerfield. My mother, Philaine Cover. My grandfather on the other side, Henry Dangerfield Lawson. And Dad was born in Guelph, Ontario, the son of an escaped slave. My mother and father made a formidable family because they convinced our children, including my younger brother Philip sitting here in the first pew, that we were children of God and that we should act as human beings in the world. We should, they said on more than one occasion, you act natural as a human. So I stand here as a consequence of a strong family, including my meeting Dorothy Dolores Wood on May 19, 1958, and our instantly recognizing we had a common humanity and a common sense of who we were. And so for 65 years, she and I have marched heart to heart through every experience, and it's been terrific, wonderful, astonishing. I'm sitting in my office in Memphis one morning. I get this phone call. It's Dorothy. She says, Jim, I've just learned that the county has issued a warrant for your arrest. It was a warrant because we forced the state and city government to create a school board that had black people on it. And she said, Jim, I think this time you should go and stay in jail. So in some ways, whether I wanted to or not, we stayed on the path. And so I stand here with Dorothy unable to be here, but as a couple for 65 years, we have worked together. And I am not sitting here alone because she said to me this morning, you know I'm there with you as I left. I want my son Morris to stand. I want my son John to stand. I want my daughter Seema to stand, and Raven just graduated with highest honors from Temple University. And stand up. I expected you to stand right here. And this is Devon, who graduates. And because we were lodged in such a family, we're still alive and well and kicking. So I appreciate all of you who come this morning. You should know that deep down in my own life at 95, I have great joy because all that I've tried to do and be has been as a pastor. That was my calling from elementary school, as my father was a pastor. And all I have tried to do is to be true to what I think it meant to be a pastor, a shepherd of people. I'm very, very grateful that I'm 95. Dorothy and I had a great day, mostly alone yesterday, the actual birthday, and then with a wonderful family gathering in the late afternoon in our home. As we move out of this sanctuary to the Fellowship Hall reception, may the reception continue the fact of our unity, spirit of work. This represents in one small way, but significant way, the beloved community. The kingdom of God on earth. We human beings must become the instruments of the mystery and the vastness of the universe in which we live. In thanking all of you for being here, I say let us continue to walk together, to do the work and the life, to live the life, to care for people, and especially to be on the side of truth, equality for all, justice for all, community for all. Never give up, but keep struggling. I want to point to one of my longtime friends, Ed Sanders, who flew in from Nashville. I met him when he was 14 years of age in the church at Centenary. So, thanks so much. And let's continue to go.
Can we give a round of applause for Joanne Lawson? Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
give this to him. Good evening. Good afternoon, brother. My name is the Reverend Eddie Anderson, and I have the honor of pastoring the church down the street and founding Clergy for Black Lives. And Reverend Lawson and I became friends during the Black Lives Matter movement. I won't forget the phone call, and I said, this has to be a joke. Being a student from Morehouse College, I knew a lot about Reverend Lawson, and he was reading the newspaper and had saw a young pastor continuing the movement, and he said, we should have some discussions. And I want to let everyone know that Reverend Lawson has been not only a mentor, but he has also been a co-conspirator for justice for the movement for Black Lives as well. I think that speaks to how he sees where we go from here. That he heard the question that his friend Martin gave us, chaos or community, and that when he said community, he meant each and every one of us. And so, Rev, I just want to say, I am because you are. We are because you are. And so, in this moment, is the mic ready? The question has been asked, where do we go from here? And I just think Reverend Lawson always says to me, he says, Eddie, we have to work for a more perfect union so that every baby, despite the zip code in which they are born in, does not have to endure policy violence, but have clean air and have health care and have a hope in a future. And so I believe among us there are some angelic troublemakers who have been students of yours, and my understanding is your mandate is you want to hear from folks what they have learned about where we go from here. And so we're going to do this in decency and order. We are in church, so not everybody's going to be able to talk. But are there 5 pupils, 5 students? There's a mic here, and we're going to ask you to come forward and just share a minute or less. All right, I am a reverend and activist. We can make this happen. A minute or less. Where we go from here with the teachings that Reverend Lawson has passed to us from ancestors to make sure we continue to bend that moral arc of justice, the universe, so that all of us can be one human family. Are there 5 among us who have been students of Reverend Lawson? This is the part where you can actually use the mic. Is there? Come, sister. Who is that? Reverend Brother Michael Lawson, the head of the Urban League. Put your hands together for him.
Good morning. My testimony today is heartfelt. I remember the day that we met. There was a meeting, I was sitting beside you, and we started talking about our ancestors. And I wanted to know whether I'm a Lawson, you're a Lawson, is there a connection? The answer was no. But I learned so much from you. And that was the beginning of my understanding of what it means to be a person that is always trying to make things better for everyone around us. For the last 6 years, I've been the president of the Los Angeles Urban League, and you have been a part of that for all of that period. I want to thank you for that and thank you for what you have done, not just for this community, but for, quite frankly, the world. The thing that confused me was that you don't take credit for all that you have done. So today we thank you. And we lift you up. And it's a happy birthday for you. It's a happy birthday for us. We are so blessed by the fact that you have been doing this for so long. Thank you.
James Morris Lawson. Jim is good about making sure I get those dates right. I think I made the mistake of saying at one point I was 13. He said, no, you were 14, and I was 33. But I must admit, as I was listening to your direction of 1 minute, I did write a little something that I'm sure you'll see as they share with you things that people submitted as they were preparing to come. And what I really said was 3 things. I said, James Lawson, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. I thank you for the way in which you put up with me, the way you trusted me, and the way in which you imparted, and these are the 3 things: wisdom, guidance, and unconditional love. I pray that I somehow understand how to do those things. I appreciated it so much when you said you're called to be a pastor. I appreciate your boldness in the way in which you always were there. Now, my wife says that I'm always guilty of exaggeration and hyperbole. But I remember when you first came into my life, when I finally had one of those opportunities to go and sit in your office, when I got ready to leave. Now, she says it didn't happen one time, it happened in more than one occasion. But I always remember the 2 things you gave me were a biography of Gandhi, and then you also gave me Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Cost of Discipleship. I must admit, when I walked out of your office, I was 14. And I remember thinking to myself, neither one of these books have pictures in them. But then I realized today that if we do those things for each other, we can consider it as paying it forward or whatever else. You certainly did that for me. But I think if we talk about where do we go from here, I think we have to go to be, all of us, people who represent you as an example of how important it is to share wisdom, to provide guidance, and to demonstrate unconditional love. You've done those things for me, and I pray that everybody here today embraces that same spirit and will carry it forward. Thank you, James Lawson.
All right. They're asking me to remind you 1 minute. All right.
Brother Lawson, I'm Bob Zellner, and I was one of your students in 1961 in Nashville, Tennessee, when you were doing the nonviolent workshops for all the young people that were joining SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And you taught me what the Methodist Church was all about. My father was a Methodist minister. My grandfather was a Methodist minister. My older brother Jim was a Methodist minister. And you have always been the heart and soul of the church that I grew up in. And I appreciate very much the attention that you gave to us young people. And we all say we'll never forget, but we'll never forget the nonviolent workshops that you prepared us for, and it saved many, many lives over all these years that we've been working in the struggle. And you always taught us that sisterhood and brotherhood is not so wild a dream as those who profit by postponing it pretend. So forward, we follow you. Thank you.
Come on up, come on up. 1 minute, I got you. I got my clock right here.
I'm Dr. Gerald Higginbotham. Dr. C.T. Vivian was my mentor for 22 years, and he mentioned you quite often. And having been raised here in the Los Angeles area, he spoke of you, and I never had the opportunity to meet you. And I came down today to be here, part of this process here, to honor you and say thank you for all that you have done. Thank you. Now, to answer the call, where do we go from here? We have to tell the truth, because, see, the American slave culture needs to be made whole here, because slavery was the foundation of this nation, and we don't talk about that. And C.T. Vivian, he stayed on me about that. He said, speak the truth. We have to address that, and we have to take it to the next level, equal status. We need the more abundant life, equal status movement to bring about change here in America. Thank you.
Speak the truth, speak the truth. Come on, Brother Ali.
Reverend James Lawson, happy birthday. My name is Ali Tweeney. I've been a member of the labor movement since 1986. Until I read something about nonviolence and Reverend James Lawson, I understood what justice, equality, fairness, and togetherness mean. I was privileged to join an organization called CLUE. I serve on the board of CLUE. Currently, alongside my sister, Reverend Melissa McCarthy, we chair the board of CLUE. We honor the work you have done and continue to do to make the world a better place. Where we go from here, we take your work, we take your philosophy, and everything you have done, not just for California, not just for America, but across the world. Happy birthday. God bless you.
Hi, Reverend Lawson. Happy birthday. Susan Minato, Unite Here, Local 11 co-president. And I would just like to thank you for that moment when you met and counseled Maria Elena Durasso, our former president, to help give us the confidence to stand up to the plantation capitalists, to stand up and have our little labor union, try to affect the federal law, the federal presidency, and to stand up right now, as we speak, with 15,000 workers on strike against the hotel owners. So thank you, Reverend Lawson.
Happy birthday, Reverend Lawson. My name is Pastor Bridie Roberts. I am the Community Organizing Director at Unite Here Local 11 and Associate Pastor at Hollywood United Methodist Church. And 20 years ago, I came to Los Angeles looking for a way to understand my call to justice in the world of ministry as a seminary student. And I found a home at CLUE, which you helped co-found, a place inviting the religious community into deep change. That summer as an intern, Unite Here Local 11 had, I think it was 12 hotels on strike. It represented a couple thousand workers, and I participated in my first nonviolent civil disobedience, holding the hand of a housekeeper leader on one side and your hand on the other. 20 years later, that same union has 100 contracts expiring, 60,000 workers fighting for a family, 15,000 strikers, some of whom are here. Strikers, can you please stand? All the Unite Here workers
If you're
that
on
are
strikers,
here.
unite here. Come on.
You're here. There's a bunch. So what does the future hold with these teachings? Well, they're in action. It's not just a legacy, it's an active work. I thank you for helping me find my footpath in ministry, and I thank you for the teachings that you have taught us, that love will prevail, that we will know justice, and the beloved community is for all of us. Thank you.
Amen.
Reverend Lawson, my name's Aisha Mason, and meeting you and studying with you shaped the course of my life from that point forward. You showed me the right relationship, the marriage of my spiritual life and activism, that we're really here to, as you say, reveal the kingdom of heaven on earth. So, what is the way forward? I remember we were talking about a particular labor victory, and you said it took 10 years to arrive at this moment. And I realized then the little things, the things that I think are not necessarily significant, they're like the grains of sand that build upon each other, and nothing I do is too small. So in this time, when I'll admit sometimes my faith in nonviolence and the practice has wavered, I am re-energized and recommitted to having greater commitment, perseverance, and faith in love, and the realization that all of our little things together as community result in a victory. Thank you so much.
I was a teenager in Jackson, Mississippi when you were in jail in Jackson, Mississippi. And you have been an influence, an inspiration, and changed my life ever since. I watched you on television. I learned how to do the study about the plantation economy and how to work for change. I listened to you on the radio. You interviewed me on the radio. And it's been humbling and such an honor and privilege to serve you and to walk alongside you these years. Beloved, beloved, we are the children of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know when Christ shall come, we shall be like him. We shall see him as he is. Praise be to God for your life and witness. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Kenneth Callahan. I was in your nonviolent class this spring. Just keeping short out of all the things that I could say, just thank you for all your contributions to the world, to nonviolence, to the history of America and the world. And as a student, I've realized, despite the constant activism and advocacy efforts that I see as a UCLA student, there's a surprising lack of students that actually know about your history and the history of nonviolence as a philosophy in general. And I just want to say that as a part of moving forward in the next steps, I look forward to being part of the next generation that pushes forward the next generation and next movement, the next push in nonviolence, and continuing on the legacy that you champion. So happy birthday, and congratulations to you and your wonderful family.
Amen. So let us continue to leave this place renewed to the protracted, long, beautiful struggle of nonviolence. Let us always fight as angelic troublemakers using the soul force, knowing that it is a force that is more powerful, to dismantle plantation capitalism and to live as one human family so that all of us can be a part of God's body. If you will, I'm from the South. Can you stand in the presence of the elder and just give him a round of applause as the greatest thank you. We said it for you guys. I know he doesn't like all the attention. Oh, you can do better than that. The architect, the general, the pastor, the family man, the mentor, the Reverend James M. Lawson Jr. Happy birthday.
You may be seated. Now we will have the Holman United Methodist Church Choir sing a few selections, but then their last selection, they will lead us in singing Happy Birthday.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. I'd like to personally thank the Holman Choir publicly for their tenacity and for their commitment being here. We were here early this morning, and you know how it is to get the voices going at 7:30 in the morning. Our last two selections are Still Away by the contemporary composer Raymond Wise, and Talk About a Child Who Do Loves Jesus, Here's One, with Neil Cole, oboe, and Isaac Green, string bass.
Still away to
can stand and let's sing Happy Birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lawson. Happy
Please remain standing. As many of you know, it's written in the program, we will transition from the sanctuary to Whitehall for continued fellowship. Remain standing, continue to stand, continue to open your eyes, continue to open your ears, continue to open your hearts, and receive this blessing. Reverend James Lawson, may God continue to bless you on this new season of your life. And to all of you, may you continue to receive the gift of love, the gift of nonviolence, the gift of equality. May you receive the gift of love, nonviolence, and equality, and may you reflect it in your families, in your neighborhoods, on your jobs, and in this world we live in. And may you know that God is able to comfort you, continue to redeem you, heal you, be with you, and give you comfort and peace and energy for the journey on this planet and beyond. And may all of God's children feel free to say, Amen. Amen.